How come one man got so much fame? To any me, it's pointless to anybody that doesn't have faith. Give me the cloth and I'll wipe my face. When it's all gone, something horribly wrong, and it's not more than a talk. Just the nature's hard enough for me. When my blood stops, someone else will come.
And we are back on the corner of Lungton Glenwood on Live from the Heartland, where we are every Saturday morning from 9 to 10 talking with interesting folks doing good work in the world and in our hood. And I want to say, just for all of you meat eaters out there, the organic pork chop special is back. Yay. Yes, indeed. And it's so special, I don't get to eat it.
We went it even further. We have organic pork bacon now. So if you're getting tired of the turkey bacon or the veggie sausage, we got the pork.
Speaking of organic, the Glenwood Winter Market continues this Sunday, March 11th. It's happens over at the Glenwood, our neighbors right down the street at 6962 North Glenwood, and it goes from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m.
And more organic stuff. We got Albert Leslie Cochran, who was a cross-dressing, often homeless man who embodied the city's Keep Austin Weird spirit, has passed away. He was a perennial candidate for mayor of Austin, Texas. And Bill Page, who's been on the show, he let me know after I sent him this article in the New York Times. He said, I can't believe how much press this guy got today after he died.
Thom Clark, our local newsman and the longtime creator and the founder and operator of El Jefe of the Community Media Workshop, which is about to celebrate their Studs Terkel awards, and is it his 100th birthday right now?
This is the centennial year of our master interviewer, author, political activist, organizer, Studs Terkel.
So it means
May 16th, 1912.
My brother's birthday. So it was 16 years ago that we sang happy birthday to him when he was here.
Exactly.
On his birthday.
And we are trying to find the audio version of that. We have printed versions of the interview we did with Studs Terkel. I also have a thing he recorded for Peggy Terry that he wasn't here for, but I am desperately searching the Michael James Heartland Rising Up Angry Join archives for this tape or mini disc or CD, whatever it's on.
Michael's got a big office in the back. He hasn't
archives.
He hasn't gotten to the walls yet.
We're actually pulling out some archival tape of an interview we did in 1999 in Stud's living room for our benefit this Wednesday. March 14th, we'll be honoring 3 more journalists for their Terkelian-like efforts in covering Chicago communities. In this case, a national star, Maria Hinojosa, from Latinos USA and many other PBS and NPR productions over the last 25 years.
NPR, that's right.
And Mick Dumke from the Chicago Reader, who's been on this program recently.
Right.
And Chip Mitchell, who covers the Humboldt Park Bureau for WBEZ Chicago Public Media, will be our honorees this year, with some wonderful former Terkel winners presenting those awardees, a scholarship to a photography student at Columbia College. We're planning on having a great time Wednesday evening at Columbia's Film Roll Cinema, and people can find out more at communitymediaworkshop.org.
Thom, congratulations.
Thank you.
You do good work.
23 years.
23 years. Listen.
Pretty amazing.
Before we bring up Elizabeth, who's from Stand Up Chicago, let's cover a little bit about this week's headlines. Specifically, we could have had a G8. My favorite headline of the week in the Sun-Times. We could have had a G8 or G8.
50 countries will still be coming here with associated diplomats' wives and diplomatic crews and all that. The world will still be watching Chicago this May.
It seems like, aren't people still coming to demonstrate against the NATO guys?
We know churches that are housing 25 to 50 people. There are at least 3 or 4 different organizations that are coalescing around this summit, which we're now calling the NATO Summit. But we always knew Chicago as economic crossroads, as center of immigrants, as where we are on the Fresh Coast would be an interesting story. Whoever decided to show up for 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 events. We have Nobel Peace Laureates arriving here at the end of April. I mean, Chicago is a crossroads of sorts. It's just perhaps not quite as narrowly defined or looked at as perhaps some elected officials see it. And our job at the Community Media Workshop is to help reporters coming along with all those other folks to discover the real Chicago. So beyond staged photo ops with diplomats and a Starbucks window here or there, there's a lot of other stories to tell about Chicago. And beginning on Monday at chicagostories.org, we will be producing about 15 or 20 different framing stories about Chicago, complete with community sources and other folks, experts that reporters can call up. And we're pushing that out to reporters near and far who might be looking for that other story about Chicago to tell.
Well, our next guest is Elizabeth Parisian from Stand Up Chicago, is going to talk a little bit about the community's response to the mayor on all of this and trying to get a square deal for the masses. But let me ask you, Thom, what was your take on the mayor's response to this? He claims he only learned an hour before it was announced that Obama had pulled the plug on it. That's a little hard to believe, but it could be true. He seemed pretty flustered when I saw him on the air.
Well, he actually
a little out of sorts.
He didn't have much to say for a couple of days on this,
right.
and indeed, I think it was a pretty last-minute announcement. We're because of this ChicagoStories.org work that we're doing. We have liaison relationships with the host committee, with the Chicago Council on Global Affairs, as well as other community organizations that are working around protests and use of free speech around this gathering. I think this was a surprise to the host committee. They reassembled quickly. They still have a lot of guests coming here, and whatever we may not know for certain until 5 years from now, when the first tell-all book is actually published. We may finally understand what happened the last couple of weeks, because we know, for instance, that all the diplomats' wives are not going to Camp David. They're coming directly to Chicago. So we're not sure exactly why the disappearance of the G8 leadership.
So they're all wives, huh? No husbands?
With one or two exceptions. With one or two exceptions.
It's changing.
It is changing. So I think that the museums that have been set aside for galas are still doing galas. There's still expected to be a lot of shutdowns of Michigan Avenue to let limos go back and forth. And we still don't know what the Secret Service is going to do in terms of the secure zone, which affects where people will be able to assemble, march, and otherwise address their grievances to
not in their
world
boats.
leaders.
Not in their boats
Probably
on
not in
Burnham
their boats.
Harbor.
Right.
Not in their canoes on the Chicago River either.
But I think this is going to be indeed a stand-up, Occupy the World Takes Notice kind of Chicago this spring.
Thom, do you have one more news event, local or global, that you want to share with us, make a comment on?
Well, besides our celebration of the Community Media Workshop's anniversary benefit, Studs Terkel Awards, this Wednesday, there are a series of centennial activities being planned around Studs' 100th birthday, beginning right ahead of the NATO Summit at the Newberry Library on his birthday, May 16th. Steppenwolf is going to follow that a week later with a special production. And there will be things going on all through the summer. There is a website being set up. I don't have it memorized at the moment.
Studs Terkel.
Well, Katie, you were the one that pointed out to me, I guess your brother, who has the same birthday as Studs Terkel, called to tell us that to look at the Sun-Times, and it was like Happy Birthday Chicago, and they mentioned 175 things to do this year in Chicago. And one of them was
The Heartland Cafe.
We were honored.
Yes, we were. That was a week
amazing.
ago. Yeah. It's
Excellent.
Nice company to be in with
It sure
Second
is.
City and the Shed Aquarium and Chicago Theater.
Well,
all
Thom,
that sort
thanks
of
for
thing.
coming up, and
You're welcome.
you're a regular on this show, and we're always
Always
glad
fun,
to
Michael
have
and
you.
Katie.
And we're going to take another short break. We hope we can listen to a little more Scottish pop music, rock and roll to the north up there. And we'll be right back with more Live from the Heartland. Our next guest is from Stand Up Chicago. She's a policy analyst, and her name is Elizabeth Parisian. I hope I can pronounce that better as we go along. We'll be right back with more Live from the Heartland.